Hey everyone, welcome back. So, we all know the Middle Ages were a time of darkness, poverty, and suffering. But here's the thing: before some genius realized they could make money off it, regular people actually had access to some pretty cool stuff. For free. Completely free. But then someone had a business idea, and everything changed. Today, we're exploring the medieval equivalent of someone buying the rights to water and suddenly charging you $5 a bottle. Stick around as we discover what free things in medieval life got commodified, monopolized, and turned into medieval cash cows. Let's start with something every medieval person needed: bread. In early medieval times, bread making was actually communal. You'd bake at home in your own oven with your own grain. Revolutionary concept, right? But here's where it gets sneaky. Around the 11th century, feudal lords realized something: everyone needs to bake bread. Everyone. So they had a brilliant idea. They built massive communal ovens in the village center and made a rule: you can only bake your bread in the Lord's oven. Not your own, the Lord's. And obviously, you had to pay. It was called banality of the mill, and yes, that's the actual historical term. It's basically the medieval version of DRM software. You own your grain, you own your hands, but you cannot use them to bake. The Lord owns the oven. The Lord owns your bread destiny. The worst part: the fees were insane. In some villages, the Lord took 10 to 20% of your bread just for using his oven. That's your family's food, gone, just for the privilege of baking. But it gets worse. If you were caught baking at home on your own property, with your own oven, you'd face fines or even have your oven destroyed. The Lord would literally smash your oven, because you were breaking the law by daring to feed your family independently. So essentially, medieval lords invented the subscription model 800 years early. Want to eat? That'll be 15% of your income, please. Forever. Now let's talk about another basic human need: fishing. In early medieval times, rivers were free. You could fish whenever you wanted. It was a food source, a livelihood, a way of life. Then the lords thought, wait, rivers? Rivers are free? That's money we're not making. So they did something absolutely ridiculous. They declared that they owned the rights to fish in the rivers on their land. Not the water, they'd let you use the water. But the fish, those belonged to the Lord. Again, this is called a banality, and it was legally enforced. You couldn't fish without permission. You couldn't hunt deer, boar, or rabbits either. All of it was now the Lord's exclusive right. If you were a peasant starving to death and you caught a rabbit to feed your kids, that was poaching. Illegal. And the punishment was brutal. You could lose your hand, your ear. In some cases, hanging. Meanwhile, the Lord had more venison than he could eat, literally rotting in storage. But a hungry peasant couldn't touch a single rabbit. But here's where it gets almost funny. The enforcement was so strict that forests became overprotected. In England specifically, the forest laws were so brutal that game animals, especially deer, started reproducing at insane rates. There were so many deer that they became a pest. So basically, medieval lords created a subscription to nature itself. Want to catch a fish? Pay the Lord. Want to hunt? Pay the Lord. Want to survive? Well, the Lord owns that too, so pay the Lord. And if you couldn't pay, you starved. And if you tried anyway, they cut your hand off. Good times, but wait, it doesn't stop with ovens. You also needed to grind your grain into flour. And guess who owned the mill? Yeah, the Lord. Again, with the same system. You couldn't grind your grain at home. You had to use the Lord's mill. You had to pay the Lord a percentage of your flour. It was another banality. And if you tried to grind grain secretly, same penalties, fines, mutilation, the whole medieval justice experience. Some lords even had inspectors who would check your grain to make sure you were grinding it at their mill. Think about that. They had grain inspectors. Medieval bureaucracy at its finest. The wildest part. Some lords owned both the oven and the mill. So your journey to having bread went like this: grind grain at the Lord's mill, pay fee 1. Bake bread at the Lord's oven, pay fee 2. 2 different taxes on the same loaf of bread. It's like paying for streaming services and the cable company that provides your internet. Except with more starvation. Let's talk about salt. In the medieval world, salt was valuable. Incredibly valuable. It was used to preserve food, cure meat, and without it, you'd die of scurvy or other nutritional deficiencies. In some regions, the Lord owned the salt works. This meant you couldn't produce salt independently. You had to buy it from the Lord. But in other regions, things got really petty. The Lord didn't own the salt, he owned the right to sell salt. So even if you found your own salt, you still had to pay him a tax just to sell it or use it. This was called the gabelle, and it was so despised in France that it literally contributed to the French Revolution. Centuries later, people were still angry about salt taxes. Think about that. A tax on salt was so unpopular that it helped spark a revolution that toppled the monarchy. That's how much people hated this thing. But here's the really creative part. Lords didn't stop at just taxing resources. They started taxing the idea of commerce. You wanted to sell something at market, you needed permission. You needed a license from the Lord. And that license cost money. But it gets crazier. In many towns, the Lord decided who could sell what. Only his butcher could sell meat. Only his baker could sell bread. Only his alewife could sell beer. If you wanted to sell cheese, you couldn't. The Lord hadn't given anyone permission to be a cheese merchant yet. Maybe next year, maybe never. It was medieval monopoly in the literal sense. The Lord controlled every aspect of trade. And if an independent merchant tried to undercut the Lord's approved vendor, they'd be fined, expelled, or have their goods confiscated. So essentially, the Lord was running the world's first corporate monopoly. One buyer, one seller, everyone else a shut up and pay. Now here's where medieval lords really got creative. They realized they could charge for anything, including love. In feudal systems, serfspeople bound to the land had to get permission to marry. But it wasn't free. You had to pay a fee called merchant to the Lord for the right to get married. Yes, marriage was a subscription service, and it gets weirder. In some regions, the fee was specifically meant to compensate the Lord for the fact that you were now having children with someone who would also owe him taxes. He was literally charging you for future revenue potential. But the worst part, the bride's family usually had to pay a higher fee than the groom's family, because apparently women were worth more in terms of tax revenue. So you couldn't even fall in love without paying a fine. And if you were a woman, double price. Some lords even had a special tax called iis primi noctis, which literally translates to the right of the first night. The Lord had the legal right to sleep with your bride on your wedding night before you did. Yes, really, medieval lords were basically running the most oppressive tech startup ever. Subscribe to this service, and we'll let you have a life. But nothing beats what they did with water. In some medieval towns, the Lord owned the wells, all of them. You wanted fresh water? You paid the Lord. You couldn't dig your own well. It was illegal. You couldn't collect rainwater in some cases. Either that was considered the Lord's property. So you had a choice: pay the Lord for water, or drink from the river and die of disease. Most people drank the river water anyway, because they were too poor to pay for well water, which is why the Middle Ages had so many plague outbreaks. Cholera loves free water that hasn't been boiled. Meanwhile, the Lord's castle had the best wells, the cleanest water, imported from the fanciest sources. Because the Lord could afford to pay himself, apparently. So why did medieval lords think they could charge for everything? Simple, because they could. Feudalism was built on the idea that the Lord owned everything: the land, the resources, the people on the land. In exchange for protection from invaders, you owed the Lord taxes, labor, and complete submission. But the genius or evil genius part was the gradual realization: if people need these things to survive, you can charge anything you want. Because what are they going to do? Leave. They can't. They're bound to the land. It's the original version of the customer has no choice, except the customer is literally enslaved. Over time, these monopolies became so normalized that people forgot there was ever any other way. They just accepted that the Lord owned everything. Ovens, mills, salt, water, marriage, everything. The system was so exploitative that even when it finally ended, people were shocked it had existed. Medieval chronicles from later periods literally describe these taxes with the tone of, "Can you believe our ancestors put up with this?" But they didn't have a choice, and the lords knew it. Here's the thing though, this system didn't disappear. It just evolved. In modern times, we call it capitalism. We don't have lords anymore, but we have corporations, and they operate on the same basic principle. If people need something to survive, you can charge them for it. Healthcare. You need it to live, so we'll charge you a subscription. Internet? You need it now, so we'll charge you. Education? Essential. Charge them. Even Nestle, a corporation, literally argued that water isn't a human right and should be privatized and sold. In 2025, they're basically trying to resurrect the medieval lords' water taxes. So the medieval lords were just doing what modern corporations do, except without the Instagram branding and customer service department. The only difference is we have a choice now. You can theoretically move to a different country, use a different service provider, or start a competitor. Medieval peasants couldn't do any of that. But the system is the same. Charge for everything humans need. Monitor it strictly. Punish anyone who tries to bypass the system. Feudalism didn't end. It just rebranded. So the next time you hear about subscription culture or recurring fees, just remember medieval lords were doing it first. They had bread subscriptions, water subscriptions, marriage subscriptions, and fishing licenses. They literally monetized existence. If you thought this was insane, please smash that like button. Subscribe for more medieval chaos that will make you grateful for living now. And comment below what medieval tax or fee shocked you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay free both mentally and financially, hopefully.